Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for the attention to this issue and for this hearing. I certainly appreciate it and appreciate that each of you are here with us today. As you heard from Senator Blumenthal a little bit earlier, this is something that we are focused on, and we are determined to find a resolution to this. Dr. Emmert, to you first. I think that it is disappointing that your Board of Governors chose not to vote on the NIL rules. And under your leadership, student athletes have been really sidelined when it comes to these issues because of an NCAA that cannot seem to make up its mind. So my question to you is simply this. Do you think it is time to call your leadership of the organization into question? Do you think you are still capable and fit to lead this organization to make a decision that is going to be fair to the student athletes and their parents?
Senator Blackburn, with all due respect, that's not a question that I need to answer. That's a question that those for whom I work need to answer. In terms of the ability of the association to make decisions, as the conversations here and in the past have demonstrated, this is a very complicated issue. And the universities have been working for now nearly 24 months trying to find an appropriate solution to come up with rules and policies that meet all of the questions that have been discussed here and all of the matters that are under consideration here. They are scheduled to vote on that before this month is over.
Okay, well, you know, the University of Tennessee has managed to figure some of this out, and the state of Tennessee has, and it's unfortunate that you're going to have, and we've had a couple of witnesses talk about the unfairness of states that have one set of rules and then another on an issue of this magnitude, but UT is deploying comprehensive NIL resources for student athletes, specifically designed NIL courses co-taught by the Haslam College of Business faculty, UT Athletics, and the College of Communication and Information. They are all working with students on NIL concepts. For the record, I'd like to get your take on this. Have you reviewed their program, and what do you think?
I'm familiar with what University of Tennessee is doing and a wide number of other schools that are preparing for the advent of supporting student athletes in many of the ways that Professor McCann was talking. I'm very enthusiastically supportive of it.
Okay. Well, Professor McCann and Professor Minton, what entity do you think should be there to oversee implementation of NIL? The NCAA has proven that they are incapable of taking up this task. So we'll start with you, Professor McCann, and then to Professor Minton.
Sure. Thank you, Senator, for the question. I think that the organization that should oversee it, the NCAA, should be a part of that. It oversees colleges. It already has systems in place. There are member institutions. I think it would be disruptive to exclude the NCAA from any role. I do think that athletes need to be part of the conversation. I think they need to be directly involved with this issue. And no matter what the entity is, whether it's a joint entity between the NCAA and something that legislation suggests, I do think athletes and former athletes need to have a direct voice.
Athletes and their parents.
Yeah, and they're adults, right? I mean, they are adults, and I think Rod comment earlier about we want to make sure that we're treating athletes the same as classmates. If you're a musician at college, you can sign a recording contract. So I think that there's something to be said for that. But I do think the NCAA needs to be a part of it, but I would say athletes do as well. That's my view.
Okay. Professor Minton?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly the NCAA, well, let's start with Congress. Congress, you know, the uniformity, I think that's a significant part of it. And requiring education. As you mentioned, you know, I applaud what has happened in your state, because that's critical, and with all due respect, I do disagree with, Mr. Gilmore on this point. The education and then the regulation of agents, that is empowering student athletes. There is a long history of agents taking, disadvantaging professional athletes. So that needs to be a component of it. That, the certification of agents and how they're going to be regulated, that's something best done outside by an entity other than the NCAA. But the NCAA should have some authority to sanction its member institutions that are violating the rules that hopefully Congress will establish.
Well, we agree with you, and we thought the NCAA was going to be able to step forward and set the rules, and had said to the NCAA, if you cannot do this, we will do it for you. That is the posture in which we find ourselves right now, is the inability of an organization that makes a tremendous amount of money, whose leadership is paid a tremendous amount of money, and it is all coming from these student-athlete events, but yet the inability to move to a point of decision has just been an insufferable event for so many of these student athletes and their parents. This is why the states have taken it upon themselves to do what the NCAA has proven incapable of doing. So, we have legislation before us. Taking an action, us taking an action may be a requirement. We certainly do think the NCAA has a role as an organization to play, but it is imperative that the leadership of this organization get the job done and not leave students in the balance, whether it is education or healthcare or NIL or any other of the various issues that you're tasked with overseeing for the health and well-being of these student athletes. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank